Good morning. Today we're going to go ahead and continue learning about different methods we can use to solve quadratic equations. So far we've talked about factoring and square roots. Today we are going to do the first of 2 days for completing the square. So our goal is I can solve quadratic equations by completing the square. And we're going to focus on quadratic equations where a is 1. So, a couple things you need to know. We want to use perfect square trinomials, which are trinomials that can be factored in the form a plus b squared. And completing the square is the process of making a quadratic a perfect square trinomial in order to solve using square roots. So if you are given x squared plus bx plus something, we're trying to figure out what that c is, you're going to take half of b and then square the answer, and that tells us what we need to have there in that blank. Notice for this, though, there's nothing in front of our x squared. Okay? So this formula here is something we need to memorize. Half of b and then square it. Watch your signs when you do that. And we're going to complete the square. So let's go ahead and practice just that part. So complete the square and then factor the trinomial. So complete the square, we need to use the formula half of b and then square it. So in this first problem, our a is 1, our b is 4, and then we're trying to find c. So we're going to take our b and divide it by 2, and then square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared gives us 4. So c needs to be 4 to make this easy to factor. Okay, so this here is what we're going to factor once we find our c. The p got messed up. Okay, so c is 4. Now, you could do x factor for this one. There's actually a shortcut. Whatever you get in your parentheses here is what is going to go in your parentheses in your factored form. So since I have a positive 2, I'm just going to have a p plus 2 squared, and this is factored. Now if you do x factor, we have a 4 on top, 4 on the bottom, so the two numbers that multiply to give me 4 and add up to 4 are 2 and 2, still will give you that p plus 2 squared. Okay, let's do one more. So again, a is 1, b is negative 26. So we're going to take negative 26 and divide it by 2 to get negative 13, and then square that to get 169. Okay, so this is our c here. So we're actually going to factor x squared minus 26x plus 169. Okay, this will always be a plus for that third one. And my factored form for this goes back to that number I got when I divided by 2. So I have a negative 13. So I'm going to have x minus 13 in my parentheses, and then square it. Okay, so that's all you're doing when you're completing the square. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take this a step further. We are going to actually solve now. So we're going to move the x squared and the x to the left side and the constant, or just the number, to the right side. We're going to divide by the coefficient, which we're not doing today. We don't have to worry about it. We're going to do that tomorrow. And then complete the square and add the answer to both sides. Most common mistake is that students forget to add it to both sides. And then factor and solve. Okay, so 5 steps there. We're skipping 2 today. We'll do it tomorrow. But we're going to follow those 5 steps. So the first thing is to make sure your n squared and your n are on the left side. We're going to move this 21 over to the right side. Okay, we don't want that there. So I'm going to cancel it. But then I'm going to put a blank because I want to figure out what this number should be to make it work nicely. And then I put a blank on the other side so I don't forget to add that number to both sides. And then we go ahead and use my formula for completing the square, which is taking half of b, or half of 4, to get 2, and then squaring it to get 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Okay, shortcut for factoring, we had a 2 in our parentheses, so we should have n plus 2 squared when we factor. And then 21 plus 4 is 25. Okay, so those are the first few steps. Now, we're going to solve this equation using square roots like we did in the last lesson. The only difference you'll notice is that before we usually had an n squared instead of having the parentheses squared. So we're going to take the square root of both sides to start. So we have n plus 2 equals, and then remember whenever you take the square root of both sides, you have to have a plus or minus sign, and the square root of 25 is 5. Okay, we're going to split this into 2 parts to solve from here because we have 2 answers there. So I'm going to do n plus 2 equals positive 5, and n plus 2 equals negative 5. And that's really what that plus or minus sign is telling you there. So if I subtract 2 for the first one, I get n equals 3. If I subtract 2 for the second one, I get n equals negative 7. And that's it. Let's do another one, 2 more. Okay. Again, keep these on the left side, move this over to the other side. A little different from our factoring, because factoring we wanted the 0 on that right side. I always put a blank there. And then 2 minus 72 is negative 70. Be careful with that step. And then I'm going to take half of b and square it. So my b is 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. So that's what I'm going to add to both sides. And then I can go ahead and use my shortcut to factor. So my factored form is going to go like this. And I had a 1 here. So I'm going to do a plus 1. And then negative 70 plus 1 is negative 69. Okay, square root both sides. Now, we can't take the square root of 69 like we did on the last slide with our 25, but we can take care of that negative using an I. So plus or minus I squared to 69. And then because I have an I there, it's a little different. I can't actually combine these together, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 1 from both sides right away. And my answer is actually going to look like this, and it's going to stay like that. Okay? Because I cannot combine a negative 1 with a radical or imaginary number. So that's my answer. Negative 1 plus I squared to 69, negative 1 minus I squared to 65, 9. And on your answer key, you'll actually see them listed separately. Just leave them like this. Okay, one more. Again, we'll just go ahead and move our 57 over. So I have x squared plus 14x plus something equals negative 65 plus the same thing. Okay, take half of b and square it. I'm going to change my colors here. So I'm going to take 14 divided by 2, which gives me 7. And then 7 squared is 49, so that's what I add to both sides. And then factor. So I get x plus 7 in my parentheses, squared equals, and then negative 65 plus 49 gives us negative 16. Okay, take the square root of both sides. And I'm left with x plus 7 equals, and then the square root of 16 is 4. Because it's negative, we need an I there, so plus or minus 4i. And then the last step is to move my 7 over, because I can't combine any of those together. So I get negative 7 plus or minus 4i. And that's it. There are a couple guided practice problems, so go ahead and do those and then go through them in class and have them checked with a partner or with a teacher, and you should be good. So go ahead and try those. If you have any questions, let us know. Tomorrow we're going to continue completing the square, and we're going to talk about a special case there. Have a good day.